We're recording, and welcome everyone to today's Independence Amplified Maryland. It's brought to you by, I don't know this introduction like Katie and Sarah do, but it's a collaborative effort on the part of all the Centers for Independent Living in the state of Maryland. And today we have guest speakers from Disability Rights Maryland who are going to be talking about the accessibility issues in Baltimore City sidewalks. And then at the end of that, we also have some special guests from the Baltimore City team, that disability access team. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with access to vaccines and other things related to COVID in Baltimore City. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. Sarah Miller had a really great practiced introduction that she logged in. And I'm going to go ahead and mute. If people, do you want them to ask questions during the presentation, Sarah? Or do you want to hold questions to the end?
Hold questions till after.
Okay, and I'll be monitoring the chat, so you can drop them in the chat if you want to, or wait and raise your hand at the end of the presentation. But Sarah, Cory, thank you guys for being here today, and take it away.
Thank you. So my name is Sara Miller, and I'm a disability rights advocate at Disability Rights Maryland. And we have Cory here, who's an attorney at Disability Rights Maryland. And we are going to discuss sidewalk, curb cutouts, ramp accessibility issues. So first, there's the Goodlaxon versus Baltimore City. The City of Baltimore sidewalks are systematically inaccessible to people with disabilities. So this means that people who use wheelchairs or other mobility devices do not have access to certain sidewalks, curb cuts, and ramps around Baltimore. Baltimore should be more equitable and accessible for those with disabilities. The disability community needs to be heard. So that's when Baltimore City is being sued because they are failing to update, maintain, and repair their sidewalks, curb cuts, and ramps. So we have Kiana Mayo, Susan Goodlaxon, and Janice Jackson. They're the plaintiffs, and they all live in Baltimore and use a mobility device. And then they've been, directly impacted by the sidewalks. And Image Center is also acting as an organizational plaintiff. And the other firms are Disability Rights Maryland, Disability Rights Advocates, Civil Rights Enforcement and Education Center, and Goldstein, Borgen, and Dardarian and Ho.
Yeah, so I'll interject here for a second, just to kind of give the lawyer's perspective. So Disability Rights Maryland, we were approached on this case by Creek Civil Rights Enforcement and Education Center last summer to do an exploration of Baltimore would be a good place to file this type of suit. Now, our co-counsel, it is kind of a national effort. Disability Rights Maryland is acting as local counsel. So the lawsuit's actually filed under my bar number because we're working with a lot of California attorneys out of Colorado. But the benefit of doing it as a nationwide effort is our co-counsel have done this successfully in other jurisdictions, specifically Portland and Long Beach. So we were really excited to work with them because they've had success in building these cases before. Anybody who's been to Baltimore is probably well aware that the sidewalks are just an absolutely terrible, terrible condition. Sarah has some photographs we'll see later of kind of examples of what those sidewalks look like and why they're a problem for our clients. And we have, 3 named plaintiffs who are part of the disability community and honestly have been fabulous. And we've had some pretty cool media coming on this case. Susan was interviewed for Time Magazine. So if you look up Susan Goodlaxon, you can find some of that. So I think we're ready for the next slide, Sarah.
So under Title II of the American Disabilities Act, governmental entities are required to provide equal access. Oops, I'm sorry, what happened? access, people with disabilities. This includes infrastructure projects like sidewalks, curb cuts, and ramps in Baltimore City. And there's actually ADA standards for sidewalks. So they should be 3 feet. They can be larger than 3 feet. If sidewalks are less than 5 feet, then there has to be like passing spaces between them. So people have more access to the sidewalk, and they must be located at least every 200 feet.
So yeah, and so the big thing with Title II is that this is kind of an affirmative obligation of governmental entities, including cities, to make sure that if you're building a sidewalk, it's going to meet that ADA standard with that width, so people can pass through. Now, what we've been seeing across the country is, even though the ADA was passed in 1991, very few places are actually, following the regulations of what they're supposed to be doing, or just plain building it and then not maintaining it. And so this is happening around the country. The Baltimore City is not alone in our state with those complaints. Now, this is a Title II case, specifically because we are trying to enforce governmental action on it, rather than Title III, which would be public accommodations if it was a private company that owned a particular part of sidewalk. But we're not. We're trying to focus on the whole city. Thus, we're doing a Title II. Now, from a legal perspective, it's interesting that we're doing, unlike Title III, where you can't necessarily get damages, you can from Title II, but we're not asking for damages in this case. Obviously, anything I assert, put an asterisk next to, because we're in litigation. But when we really sat down and talked with our clients, to calculate damages of how people have been denied access to participating in their community and in Baltimore City because of how bad the sidewalks are and how common it is for people using wheelchairs being forced into the streets in incredibly dangerous situations. At that point, we just calculating the damages, we probably bankrupt the city of Baltimore in 5 seconds. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get the sidewalks fixed. So I think we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so actually there's 2 surveys conducted by Baltimore demonstrating the violations of the curb ramps and sidewalk requirements. So in 2016, it established that 64% of the 64 miles of sidewalk and 93% of the 2,933 curb ramps in the central business district of the city were not compliant with accessibility requirements. So this has had an enormous impact on people who use these sidewalks each day.
Yeah, so when we filed the case, a lot of our complaint was reliant on the city's own surveys conducted, and just kind of establishing that there really hasn't been any action taken by the city of Baltimore after this information was brought to their attention by their own surveys. So it's pretty egregious negligence on their part. And the numbers are just astronomically high with how few areas of Baltimore are actually accessible for those with disabilities or mobility disabilities. So you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, and I actually have some examples of ramps, a curb cutout and ramp, what it's supposed to look like. So this is a perpendicular ramp, and you can see that the ramp goes from top to bottom, and it's colored differently so people can see it. And the transitions, from the sidewalk to the ramp, and then the ramp to the gutter, and then the gutter to the road. And then the flared sides are what connects the sidewalk to the road. So here's, one that looks like the ramp is marked red, so it allows the wheelchair or other mobile devices to travel up and down from the sidewalk. I talked about the transitions between the ramp and the sidewalk, gutter and street. The flared side, so the one kind of like going down, that's like bringing the curb to the level of the street. And then the gutter and the roadway surfaces immediately next to the curb that runs along the curb. So this is what it should look like. And there's another curb cut as well. Then we've got the parallel curb cut. So side to side, the ramp is marked yellow, allows wheelchairs or other mobile devices to travel up and down. The transitions between the ramp and the sidewalk, gutter, and street, they're located at the top and bottom of the ramp. The flared sides connect the curb to the street, and then you see the gutter and then the street itself.
Yeah, and it's really important for the city, well, anywhere, to get these particular types of curb cuts correct, because if you don't do this correctly, you're going to have people who can't utilize them, or the curb cut is going to be pushing someone out into the middle of the street rather than the crosswalk. If it's too steep, you're not going to be able to get over it. If it's not flared correctly, you're going to find people still falling off of the curb. And for people in power chairs, this is especially dangerous. So while it can seem very nitpicky on the development of the curb ramps, it actually has enormous impact on folks' ability to actually get from point A to point B.
So here are some pictures of current sidewalk, curb cut, and ramp conditions in Baltimore City. So here's one. We can see that it really does not look like that has been repaired for a very long time. There's rocks. These rocks could get caught in wheelchairs, wheelchair wheels, damage the wheelchair. It looks like it would be dangerous to go across with a wheelchair or other mobile device. Then as you can see, the curb ramp looks like it doesn't even have like the color code section of where you go down. So somebody could actually, mistakenly go off the curb. And this really doesn't look like it's like been worked on at all in a while. And here's another one, curb cut. It just looks like they just haven't done anything in a while to help with that. And then here's a sidewalk, cracks. It looks like it's not even, very uneven. You have to be careful.
So this particular, sorry, Sarah.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Well, I just wanted to quick say, so this particular photo I took, and it is right outside of one of our named plaintiffs' houses. And this is the condition of the sidewalk as it is outside of her house. But in regards to curb ramps, there are no curb ramps on her corner. So she, in fact, has to get in and out of her car from the sidewalk, which is enormously painful for her. And she does not have a driveway, which is extremely common in Baltimore City. So you have a case where at her house, she is, in fact, completely isolated from leaving without a car, because she cannot go down the street. She cannot leave from the corner that she lives on. And thankfully, she is capable of driving, but there are many people in a similar situation like her who cannot drive, either for disability related reasons, or they're just unable to drive they're unable to afford a car. And so it just becomes, even though this may look minor, it just becomes a very isolating factor for those individuals. And Sarah, you can keep going.
So here's an example of another sidewalk. I mean, if you look at the top, it just looks very uneven and it look, I mean, any mobility device, I mean, that could be dangerous. And then this sidewalk, there's that big plant. And is this the sidewalk that doesn't have curb cuts? Cory?
No. So this is a different part of Baltimore City. The sidewalks we were previously looking at were in mostly northeast Baltimore, which is very residential, lots of single family homes. This is down in Sandtown, Winchester. This is probably one of the most impoverished neighborhoods. So what we were looking at previously, I would say, is a just kind of to show how widespread the sidewalk issue is. So with the previous pictures, that was generally in a area of higher socioeconomic residents, and then we have Sandtown, Winchester, which unfortunately is notorious for being one of the highest rates of lead paint poisoning of children in the country. And it's just a very impoverished neighborhood. So what I wanted to kind of show with these different photos is that it's not an isolated issue. It's all throughout the city. And this is Sandtown, Winchester is in southwest Baltimore, so opposite end.
This is a picture of a sidewalk. Looks was this in Baltimore? Do you know what part of Baltimore City this was, Cory?
This is also Sandtown.
Sandtown, yeah. I mean, look at that. Look at that sidewalk. It hasn't been repaved or anything. So dangerous. Here's another view of it. Yeah, a lot of these are just not, you can tell that a lot of the sidewalks just have not been kept up, and even the curb cuts and ramps, which is extremely dangerous. So the end goal of this lawsuit is to get the city to agree to a long-term plan where we can participate in monitoring and enforcement of making the curb cuts, ramps, and sidewalks more compliant with ADA standards. So our goal is to make Baltimore a more equitable and accessible city for those with disabilities, and ensuring the disability community has a voice.
Yeah, and so what we're really trying to do is we're trying to get the city to develop a plan where the maintenance of sidewalks and the development's actually going to happen. Now, we're limited in what we can say because we're in litigation, but what I can say is what we are looking from the community, and part of why we want to do this outreach is we are looking to speak with individuals who have been directly impacted. Even though we have named plaintiffs, we are doing this as a class action lawsuit, which means that we need to go through the process of class certification. So what we are looking to do right now is to interview people who have been directly impacted by the condition of the sidewalks, and potentially signing affidavits that we can file with the court to show that people with mobility issues have been impacted as a class, as a group, rather than just these three individual named plaintiffs. Because what we want to avoid is the city turning around and saying, oh, well, we'll fix the sidewalks outside of these people's particular houses. But no, this is a citywide issue, and we want to show the folks with mobility disabilities as a community that are all facing a similar impact. So if you know anybody that is interested in being interviewed, or you yourself have been impacted and would like to be interviewed, that's our number. You can also always email DRM. And yeah, I think, Sara, is there anything else, or do you think we're ready for questions?
Yeah, I'm ready for questions. Let's see. Are there questions in the chat?
Yes, there's actually a couple of questions in the chat. One is, do you find that historic preservation laws often pose a challenge to storefronts and certain businesses when faced with adhering to the ADA standards?
So I'll field that one. So in regards to the actual buildings themselves, if the building was built before a certain date, then it doesn't necessarily have to follow ADA standards. But with storefronts, generally speaking, if we're talking about sidewalks, I wouldn't say that's a priority issue for getting the maintenance done. What it's really been is just kind of local governments just really failing to enforce their own codes, especially with ongoing construction, issuing permits. I think that's really where you have the issue. I wouldn't necessarily say that the historic preservation laws impact the sidewalks, but for actual accessibility inside the buildings, yes, but that's going to be a whole other issue. And with the ADA, there's different deadlines by which the building had to be built before the ADA can be enforced in that building. But that's built into the ADA. That's not necessarily part of the historic preservation law. So I hope that answers your question.
See, is the push button for the light crossing accessible? I'm guessing the to press to cross the street. I mean, Cory, would you say that sometimes that can be hard to get to?
So I know the National Federation of the Blind has had some issues with light crossing buttons in the past. So I would say if that's an interest of yours, I would check out the NFB's site because I know they've done some more work on that. We've been mostly working on curb ramps for folks using mobility devices. I would say that I haven't heard too much about light crossings not being accessible, but once again, my understanding is that that is more of a concern for the blind community, so they may have a different answer from what we would have.
A question. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, my name is Chioke Hassan. Yes. I used to ride to school with deaf kids when I was going to Phillips School in Laurel. Do you guys work with deaf people and blind people?
Yeah, so we are the protection and advocacy agency for the disability community as a whole. So we are basically a private attorney general for the disability community. So yeah, we absolutely work with the deaf community and the blind community. This particular class action suit that we're talking about today, we are using persons with mobility disabilities as the class. So because we're focused on the construction of the curb ramps. So this particular suit's focused on that community because that's how we're forming the class. But for our other work, we do work with those communities.
Cory, Bong has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Don't have
Bong,
It's
what's your
okay.
question?
Well, before I ask the question, did you get all of the questions from the chat?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question and then a comment. So my question is, based off of the presentation, most of these slides were sidewalks and curb cuts that needed to either be repaired or cleaned up or straightened up in some sort of way. My question is DRM taking a focus also on areas, whether it's Baltimore City or Baltimore County that don't have an actual curb cut on their curbs. Because I know there's a lot of, just dealing in the field that I'm in transportation, I know that there's a lot of bus stops, both in Baltimore City and in Baltimore County, where buses drop off, and then it's like a half a mile for the closest curb cut.
Yeah, no. That's a great question. And so, yes, that is absolutely one of the things we're focused on in this suit. And one of the bigger issues we've heard from our plaintiffs and from the community at large is the lack of curb ramps at transportation sections. So I know that our plaintiff, Miss Mayo, uses the light rail in Baltimore City on a frequent basis, and there are several light rail stations where she has that exact issue. So yeah, that particular issue we are absolutely flagging as part of this lawsuit, and consider that especially the transportation centers like bus stops or light rail stops as a priority. This particular lawsuit we filed against Baltimore City. I don't know if we have the capacity to also sue the county, but I would not, I mean, I'm sure Baltimore County has basically the same issues. Did that answer your question?
Yes. And then the comment that I had was regarding the traffic light. So to the person who asked about the traffic light, that's more of a local Baltimore City Department of Transportation question, because they would really handle all of the lights. So I would go on their website to see if you could find out any information about that.
Oh, yeah, no, and I'll second that. If the question was regarding a specific light, absolutely call 311, absolutely file a complaint. Yeah, because unless you articulate what's needed, rarely does it get done. And honestly, if you make that 311 complaint and they don't do anything about it, please reach out to us and we would be happy to work with you on a follow-up with that complaint. But yeah, I would encourage you to call 311. And I believe
there's one more question from Kelly, who's asking if you were looking for affidavits from Baltimore, Maryland, or sidewalks in general. But this is specifically the city, correct?
Yes. So I would, so basically what we're trying to do is we are looking for affidavits from individuals who have been directly impacted by the condition of sidewalks inside Baltimore City. This can either be people who are residents of Baltimore City or who travel to Baltimore City on a regular basis. And it's because part of the class is people with mobility disabilities who have been impacted by the conditions of sidewalks inside the city of Baltimore. Unfortunately, while I'm sure lots of people are being impacted by this issue because it is national, for our needs right now, we are focused on Baltimore City.
And there's a question. Amanda, do you want to ask your question directly, or do you want me to read it from the chat? If you want to ask, you could just unmute.
Either is fine, Heather. It's okay if you want me to kind of articulate it out loud. So hi, my name is Amanda Taylor. And I had a question about, I know this is a class action lawsuit primarily focused on individuals with mobility related disabilities, but I wondered if you considered showcasing the impact on the disability community as a whole. And the example I gave in the chat was individuals with cognitive disabilities can also benefit from color-coded curb cuts, which you had mentioned, to signal where the street crossing is placed, or truncated domes to signal where, they would cross the street safely. So I didn't know if you just had, taken that into consideration as another example to sort of support your case.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So in regards to that, because the class in the suit is narrowly defined, anything we're going to be filing with the court is going to be that particular class. obviously the impact of what we're trying to accomplish is going to have much bigger impact on folks, not just in the disability community, but the way the litigation is working right now, we do have to focus on the class that we've chosen to represent. But at the same time, I mean, you're not wrong, but the way we have to litigate it is, unfortunately, we do have to focus on that narrow definition we've gone with.
That makes sense. Thank you. The second part of my question was, how would someone get in contact with you, or how would they submit their personal story or testimony if they have an example of a sidewalk that you're asking for?
Yeah, sure. So I will go ahead and put my email in the chat. So I am conducting the interviews myself. So hold on. So I have placed my email in there, and then I don't know if anybody else can see the shared screen, but I'll put the phone number into the chat as well. So we basically set up a hotline. So if anybody wants to reach out to me and talk with me, I would be more than happy to hear from anybody interested who's been impacted. As I said, we're not looking for more plaintiffs, but being able to show the impact on the class as a whole would be beneficial. And I did see one question.
So I have a question. Do you guys work with mobility, with MTA mobility, or work with other places like with the disabled, like with elderly people?
Yeah, so we I'm not on this case, but Gabriel, who works at our office, has been investigating MTA mobility for a while now. So if you have a issue with mobility, I'm
I
happy.
take mobility, that's the thing too. I'm not in a wheelchair, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, if you know
where's your website?
Oh, that's
Kiyoki, we'll add that into the chat, okay?
All right, thank you. Please.
You're welcome. Cory,
Yeah,
what
and
were
I'll-
you saying about what other suits you guys have going on behalf of the
yeah, so
disabilities
I
community?
can't comment on mobility, but what I can say is we do have somebody investigating it. Whether or not we're going to take litigation action on mobility, I can't confirm nor deny on this call. So
Are you guys looking at, I know some of the things that have come up in other parts of the state, because this is from centers of independent living all around the state of Maryland. I know there's been some issues in Montgomery County with some of the updates to their bus stops and other things. Do you guys serve the whole state of Maryland?
yeah, we serve the whole state of Maryland. If anybody wants to reach out to us, I think Sara, we've talked about the gates before.
Yeah,
So
you read a letter for us and gave some comments, and it's moved on a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but I haven't had time to work on it, so I have to go back. But I think I'm not sure what's going to happen next. As Cory said, I can't confirm or deny anything that's going on in this moment around floating bus stops. Because it's there's probably some other stuff.
yeah,
But I liked Cory's way of saying it.
but following up on that, I mean, so we take on a lot of different cases, and it's not just litigation. So Sara, who is working on the presentation with me, is our advocates. We have advocates who will do non-legal work if there's something that can be done without getting into litigation. We have folks who do that. We do representative payee investigations. Our bread and butter is generally like our main goal as an organization is to do Olmstead enforcement, which is trying to keep people out of institutional settings by making sure that they have equal access to their communities. And so for us, we're following the Olmstead mandate we have with this lawsuit, because if somebody can't get around the city, that it impacts their ability to live independently and potentially face a higher rate of institutionalization. So that's why we're taking on this type of case. And honestly, if it's a case where you think that there is some type of barrier to people living independently, which you guys are the Center for Independent Living, please reach out to us, because, our job is, as I said, we're kind of a private attorney general for your community. So, if you need us, call us. So.
And I personally just have one quick question. So if other jurisdictions saw Baltimore City being involved in something like this, does it encourage, do you see any kind of ripple effect with other jurisdictions that go, hey, wait a minute, maybe we need to get on this issue as well, because this is happening in Baltimore City and it could happen to us?
Yeah, so I mean, in regards to the sidewalk case, I don't have any particular examples in Maryland where a county has changed their policy or started up specifically in response to our lawsuit. What I can say is not necessarily on the sidewalk issue, but there have been and I'm thinking in my mind, we have a couple long-term consent decrees with public housing authorities on, how they're treating people with disabilities in their programs. And we've definitely seen public housing authorities take those issues more seriously, because we have moved forward with litigation in other jurisdictions.
Interesting. Thank you guys for coming out today to share. I'm sorry Mike wasn't here to welcome you, but we appreciate you guys coming and presenting about this. And if we put the phone numbers and the Disability Rights Maryland website in the chat, and if you can have something that you want to share with Cory or Sara, you can contact them through the hotline. And then when we have kind of piggybacking onto this presentation, we have Astrid with the Baltimore City COVAX program. Astrid.
Hello. Hi. How's everyone today?
Great. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
I know you guys were going to update, and I can never remember what DUC team stands for. I've asked somebody this morning. Still, the Disability Underlying Conditions team, right?
Yeah, that's disability and underlying conditions. Yep, it's the DUC team.
The DUC team. I just know you guys as the DUC team, but you're with with a project with the Baltimore City Department of Health, which Image is involved with this as well, ensuring that sites are accessible for people with disabilities, and also just taking into consideration different ways to deliver some of these materials. And you guys were going to give us a quick update today about some upcoming things we need to know about.
Sure. So I think the most exciting one that I'm thrilled, Cheryl Grossman and I have been working together with the Baltimore City Health Department to collaborate on a homebound test kit program where Civic Works will be delivering, we will bring it to your doorstep, a test kit to you if you are unable, if you don't have access to transportation for whatever reason. So this goes for those who are homebound and those who are homebound adjacent, such as caretakers. And we are also offering to administer the test to you if you're not able to give it to yourself, because first we want to make sure that you're doing the test right. And then second, we also want to make sure that we are accurately sending those test results back to the Maryland Health Department so those statistics can be taken. Yeah, we are also in line with that program. We are also working with individuals to make sure that they are vaccinated, and if they have not been able to access vaccines, make sure that they have a vaccination plan. We work with Maryland Access Point to get homebound vaccines brought to you in the home. And then we also have an eviction prevention program. So if you've been economically or financially impacted by COVID, we will help walk you through the application process to receive funds to help pay for rent. As long as you have as long as you've been economically affected by COVID. And even if you're not sure, we encourage you to call us anyway, and we can figure out an impact statement for you so that you can get the help that you need. And we are doing all of these things we are working to make sure that all of these programs are accessible as possible to those who need it. So even if it comes down to, we are putting in the information for you, we're more than happy to do that to make sure that you're getting the PPE that you need, getting tested, finding a vaccine site or getting a vaccine brought to you in home, and taking advantage of other COVID specific help that's out there. I'll go ahead and put our phone number in
great.
the
Thank you.
chat. We have a website, but it's not really useful. Our phone number is better. I'm sorry. Thank you for that question. That's a fantastic question. And most people do want to see that
Thank
information.
you. That was me that gave the question.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Kathy.
you. Okay. Unfortunately, our website isn't, it's not very descriptive. What I can do is make sure that I can get our flyer to Cheryl, or I can make sure I can get a plain text flyer out that explains all of explains all of our programs, so that you guys can have access to that, because we are very nimble, and our goal is to get back to people within a week for whatever they need. The test kits are obviously a priority. We're trying to get those out in 24 hours, but with us, you're not running into a whole bunch of robots. You're reaching a live person at the other end of the line.
Awesome. So, what's the phone number?
Sure. So that's 410-929-5448.
Okay. No, I just put it in there too. So it's in there twice. Everybody has the number now. And of course, you can reach Cheryl Grossman through the Image Center. We are partnering with Baltimore City on these projects. And so Cheryl's our go-to person making it all happen.
Yes. And also our email is COVAX, COVAX, outreach@civicworks.com. If you'd like to, if that's a better way for anyone to communicate, please send requests out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you guys for coming out today.
Sure. Thanks to Cheryl for having us. She's amazing. I just want to make sure that no one forgets that she's definitely the one that put the bug in my ear about making test kits available to everyone. So
Cheryl puts a lot of bugs in people's ears if they to make things happen for folks. She's an amazing advocate for that.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well, we appreciate everybody coming out. The next IM that we have that should be scheduled will be February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, but I don't have any information on what we're talking about yet. So it'll be a surprise. I'm looking at Sara because she has her camera on and Katie doesn't have her camera on.
I've done my share. I'm on a break.
So stay tuned, but we're looking to do potentially the second and fourth Mondays of each month because we're working around a couple of federal holidays in January and February.
So Heather, this is Betsy.
Hey, Betsy.
I have that the next one is February 7th, and we have Denise Schuler from MD Tap coming on to talk about the high-tech reuse center.
Cool.
If that changed, I need to let her know that.
We can do February 7th. We don't have anything scheduled that day, so I mean beyond that. So
because she's already committed to the 7th.
We're doing the 7th. So the next IM is going to be on February 7th about high-tech. Was it the high-tech assistive technology reuse program?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I may not have gotten that email or lost
Yes,
that email or something.
Heather, did
Yes.
you look on the did you see that I sent on your email about DDS, that there's a legislation thing next month?
The bhsbaltimore.org.
Well, look that one up to try to get them on, because I did have something with people on the go. I had one on mental health. It's a great call. Try to look to get them on.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Chucky.
But I sent on there on Friday on your email about
yes.
that one for the 22nd of next month.
Okay. All
There's a
right.
virtual with DD, legislation. It'll be a virtual on February 22nd, which is Tuesday.
All right. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming out today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but thank you for being part of today's I Am.